Hello, welcome to La Jolla Ranch. Just wanted to do a second video follow-up. This is CJ doing a second follow-up on teachers in the world of teaching. This is a very important subject, obviously, to me. I've done this job for nearly 3 decades. And I just wanted to share my observations as to what I've seen over that time, and all in support of my fellow teachers. I'm certainly not going to be siding with administrators who I've been battling it out with ever since I started, even when I was a substitute teacher in the late 90s. First, I wanted to start with the change that I observed in the time that I had finished high school in the early 90s, and the way things were back then for us mid-range Gen X people. What we faced as students in public schools, at least in those days, and probably private as well, what we faced was basically you were the student and then everybody else was on the other side. Your parent, the teacher, and the administration were a team, an essentially unbreakable team, because they never really got out of line. It was only us students who messed around. But one of the things that mitigated against that behavior was the fact that you would face that troika if you messed around, right? My dad would certainly give me an old school talking to if I messed around. And that would be after the teacher and the administration had their say. And basically 3 people against 1, and that's how it was. Something happened in the intervening time during that half decade. By the late 90s, when I got into teaching, suddenly there it was. No longer was it a troika against the student. It was the teacher suddenly becoming isolated, with the parent and the administrator and the student now working against the teacher. Now, I don't know how this happened so quickly, or I don't think it's random. Things like that are certainly not organic. I think part of it is an anti-teachers union movement, because let's face it, if you look it up, one of the most powerful unions, or some of the most powerful unions in the US, are teachers unions, the national ones like the NEA and so on. I happen to have been in a rather large union in Southern California during my time. I won't name it. But so something happened, and that change could not have, again, taken place organically. It's clear that there was some kind of a move against the teachers, and in that also the same way against the union. And I've had trouble with that ever since. And the first time I really saw it manifest was as a substitute teacher. I remember I reported some kids that got in fights that day. And the next thing I know, the principal's on me telling me to write a report and how it was my fault that these kids got in a fight. Now, mind you, this is 1998 when that happened. Now, what kind of an administrator would expect a substitute, a one-day substitute, to walk into some middle school class, and then if something bad happens with students acting crazy, it's their fault? It was a middle school, and a poorly run one at that. And what did I get? This principal going after me as the substitute. And this happened again and again. You go into a classroom, teacher wouldn't have any lesson plans. Sometimes I put a video on, a harmless video. One time I had the movie Jaws, and they just went berserk. And Jaws is so benign. I think there's 2 or 3 swear words in the entire movie. Everybody knows it's a fake shark, you know. These people acted as if I had put on some triple X-rated porn. And I remember my father was a lawyer. My late father, he found out about that. And he said, "Oh, that's classic no due process. They didn't investigate. They just condemned you, didn't they?" And I said, "Yes." And so he said, "I'm going to write a wolf letter to them," which is a lawyer's term of sending a letter from a law firm, and scares the hell out of people generally. And those people learned not to do that. So anyway, as I went along teaching, suddenly I saw it again happening. You could see it with, the low test scores on the state tests, which none of the kids cared about because it wasn't connected to any grade of theirs in the class. So naturally, they didn't try very hard on these tests. And that's exactly what we got, right? We got this exact same kind of issue where, oh, it's the teacher's fault, low test scores. And of course, I was working in the inner city. It's like these kids are dropping out at a 50% rate. We've got kids joining gangs and young people getting pregnant too early, and just, the typical inner city stuff. And all of that was suddenly now being blamed on us. Apparently, the teachers were supposed to change the culture of the inner city as well as do the actual job we signed a contract for. So, things like this began to tumbleweed, and it was clear to me that this issue was simply going to continue to be a thorn in the side of any well-meaning teacher who's just trying to do their job. And I found that this has continued to this day into the 2020s. Here at this school that I'm at currently, the students have been cheating. We got a big problem with cheating, not just AI and all of that. I'm talking on tests, old school style cheating with little cheat notes that I catch. Sometimes we do tests on the computers. There's ways to lock it so they can't go on the internet. So they bring little pieces of paper to cheat with, and I've caught several of them. And I fail them, and they get a 0 on the test. And I was starting to realize that wasn't good enough. These kids are willing to take that hit. And all the ones who do get away with it, we can't catch every person. So I go to the director of the school and I say, look, we got a problem with cheating. Can we please get a straight up answer as to what the school policy is regarding cheating students? And instead of getting a simple answer to an obvious, important question, I teach, high school. These kids are about to go to university. I received, no joke, a 30 to 40 minute lecture attacking me ad hominem on top of ad hominem, logical fallacy after logical fallacy, and never was the question ever answered. So I was attacked personally. I was accused of allowing my students to cheat on the test, which is probably the most insulting bunch of nonsense I've ever heard in my life. I said, if somebody said that about me in the US, I would sue them for slander. That person was a liar who said that to you. And of course, it left this administrator totally unfazed. And I found myself really against the wall with this person. It was just somehow everything was my fault, a stubborn refusal to give me any, and I mean any, support. You'd think when kids are cheating like this that there would be support. But of course there wasn't. So I still remember by the end of it, instead of her saying, look, I'll talk to the administrators, the principals, and we'll try to work something out or find out what the cheating policy should be, which is the proper professional answer, she was telling me, you call a meeting. You go ahead and set a policy. Any fool knows I can't call a meeting. I'm just a teacher. I certainly can't set policy. That's the job of the administrator. And so she finished off this personal attack with this kind of nonsense. And I know that other teachers around the world, certainly back in the US, you guys are all dealing with this nonsense. We are being blamed. The media hates us. The politicians hate us. Radio pundits. Everybody blames the teachers. People think that because they were students, therefore they know what it is to be a teacher, and you don't. That's like saying because you played basketball, therefore you can be Phil Jackson. You can't. And you don't know anything about coaching. You don't know anything about teaching. It's the equivalent of blaming the police if a bank gets robbed. Do we all go and attack the cops because they didn't stop the bank robbery before it happened? No, we expect them to go find the bank robber. Do we attack firemen because a home burns down? Does the police chief blame the police when there's a crime? Does the fire chief blame the rank and file fireman because somebody committed arson? No, nobody does that. But for some reason, when it comes to teaching, they do that. They engage in that totally unfair nonsense behavior. And I just wanted to say, look, I've been through it for all these decades, 5 schools in 4 countries, almost 3 decades now. And those of you out there who are teachers, I'm talking to you. I know you've been putting up with this stuff the same way that I have. I'm just going to say, keep sticking it out. You don't have to put up with it. Be strong. Know that you have rights. Know that they have to do due process. They can't just condemn you without investigating. always demand that they do a proper investigation, that you get a chance to defend yourself and to give your side of the story. You should be able to confront your accuser. Some of these administrators won't tell you the identity of the kid accusing you. And that is also a denial of due process, at least in the US, where you are supposed to be able to confront your accuser. So this is to you, my fellow teachers. Don't let them get you down. You're doing something noble. You're actually working for a living. And I have to say, I still have students from 20 years ago that still talk to me online, on Facebook, kids that are now in their 30s who have their own families. And that really touches me the most. When I get that, when a student remembers me 20 years later and still remembers things that I taught them and still has appreciation for it, that is why I do the job. It's why you do the job too. No matter what the administrator says, notwithstanding the bureaucratic resistance and you know what rolling downhill. So here's to you, my fellow teachers. Let's carry on. See ya.